So who's going to smash that nani, and will there be multiple nanis eaten from the wall of the NGV in December?
Bang, 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 bang on.
Hello, Miff.
Hello, Zan. Happy launch week of your brand new television series.
Oh,
it was
thank you.
amazing.
Noel
the other
Gallagher,
night.
so good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It was beautiful.
Well, thanks, mate. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who watched. I got lots of lovely messages and little comments on socials, and you would know this, when you make something and you spend a long time making it and there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of decisions made, all you can do at a certain point is sit back and go, I hope they like it. And so I was so nervous. I had the full, people turn up to my party anxiety vibes going on, which I think I mentioned last week. But people turned up, people watched it and they loved it. And I was just stoked that, people got something new out of Noel Gallagher as well, because he's kind of a combative character. He is a bit divisive, but I think that people saw something new in old Noel through the songs that he chose. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of Take 5, isn't it? That the songs that they choose can actually open a portal into another world that perhaps they haven't shown everyone before, and I love that.
Also, people just like rediscovering Air's Moon Safari record and All I Need.
Such a good record.
Because that was one of the
Great
songs
song.
that I was like, why has he chosen this? Everything else I could trace a line to, but I was like, why has he chosen this? And it was beautiful to hear him speak about that. So thanks, babes. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Bang On is your place for music, art, life and stuff. And we are, I think fair to say, here for you this week because it has been a really tough week across the world in so many different ways. Here in Australia, it is an intense time. Just wanted to throw our big Bang On arms around the Bang fam and show you lots of love if you're feeling the stress, anxiety, pain, sadness, anger, any of it this week. We hear you, we see you, and we're here to, I guess, bring some light into your world. But there was also a really sad and shocking loss that we heard about yesterday. And Miff, I know that you knew Cal Wilson. I texted you straight away when I heard the news. Just such a sad and shocking loss of an incredible comedian and human.
Yeah, what an incredible woman she was, She was loved by everyone, and I think in comedy that's not an easy position to hold, to be loved by everybody, but she was loved because she was really generous to everybody, gave everyone time. She helped people coming up through the scene. She was just a gorgeous person to be around. Like people were saying, if Cal Wilson was on the bill, we knew it was going to be a good time because she gave everything to every moment that she was involved in. And it's really sad. She was on Spicks and Specks so many times, such a huge part of the family, and will be so terribly missed. All my love to her family and her beautiful cats who she loved so much. She was one of us, mad cat lady. And, it's just an utter tragedy and she's way too young. So, it's been a rough couple of days for everybody with that on top of it. And from it all I can say is, Felicity Ward, comedian, said it, call your friends and tell them you love them, because it was all very shocking and very sudden.
Yeah. Thoughts with everyone. I know that you and I, and of course, obviously you knew Cal, the ripple effect through the comedy community, particularly in Melbourne where it's particularly strong. I just know so many people personally who were friends with Cal, and it just seemed like her effects, her love and her generosity just reached so many people. So for any Bang fam who are feeling that loss, quite personally, we're really, really sorry. And I'm sorry for your loss as well, Miff. It's just bloody awful.
Yeah, awful and tragic.
I feel like Cal would have loved Fat Bear Week though. And can we just...
She would have loved Fat Bear Week because that's the thing. She just loved a lot of things that I loved and we got along really well on those levels. And she was also really clever and really smart and really funny too. So, one of a kind. And yes, Fat Bear Week would have been right up her alley, as it is mine. Good to see that we have a winner.
We have a winner, yes. As forecast, what was it, Fat Tuesday? That's when they were going to be revealing the winner a couple of days ago. And the winner is indeed Grazer, the female bear who embraced singledom to concentrate on herself and gain weight. She got a majority of the public's votes, 108,321 votes compared with Chunk, which was her nearest competitor, at 23,000. So she absolutely blitzed the competition.
And looking at the images of her, she deserved it 100%. She didn't have any babies this year, so she had time to dedicate herself to the glow up, which was just basically eating and living her best life.
The best angler on the river, according to the park ranger.
Yeah, killed it on the salmon. It's interesting though, she didn't have any mouths to feed this year, but still went in extremely hard. So I give her full props for taking away the competition. She looked incredible. And the comments going around on the internet have just been beautiful. People are saying on TikTok they're calling her the people's princess. Of course she is. She had her best glow up. Finally, my girl has her crown. It's just a landslide victory to the Queen. It was the year of the Barbie movie, and then this. It's just women.
Just conflating those two huge pop culture moments, sure.
Yeah, women coming up on top. 2023.
Can I just give a shout out to the runner-up Chunk though, because there was there's so many great quotes in this article, which I will put a link to in the show notes. Whoever the ABC journo was on shift that day, it was, I reckon, the best day of his year. Park ranger Felicia Jimenez said that Chunk, the big boy, still managed to get fat for winter despite already being a massive, massive bear. So he's chonked up, Chunk is chonked up, and he's reached the highest of the highs, but he's no match for Grazer, who is the winner of Fat Bear Week. And it is my new favourite week. Bang On has become your bear podcast, it seems, in so many ways, and we love to hear it and celebrate it. Who knew that when I talked about avoiding bears in Japan that we would follow this trail down to Fat Bear Week?
It's the best kind of trail, and I think we can all take a lesson or two from Grazer, who is, I mean, that's just how we want to be, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Looking after number one, getting a glow up, having a great sleep at the end of it.
It's called self-care. Ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Miff, while we're on animals, because we do seem to talk a lot about animals, can we just take a moment to acknowledge the many, many emails that have come through to the Bang Box on the news of the Peregrine Falcons, the famous Peregrine Falcons at the top end of Collins Street, which you love so much. What's the latest news that we have on these birds?
Very sad news. Looks like Mum had a bit of an accident, or maybe was fighting, defending her territory, because apparently where they have their nest, that is much desired territory in the Peregrine Falcon world. I can see why. Top of the town on Collins Street. It's a hot address. But
it's the penthouse.
It is the penthouse suite, and sadly, it looks like she's had some sort of altercation, and she wasn't well, and so she didn't keep fertilising the eggs at a very pivotal time in their development. And the fella bird stepped up, M22 we call him. He stepped up and apparently was even sitting on the eggs at night, which is very, very rare for a male peregrine falcon to do. And he tried his hardest, but she was a bit dazed and confused and didn't sit on the nest, which is very sad. Apparently she's looking a lot better now, but the powers that be have decided that the birds are not going to be, the eggs are not viable this year because they just spent too long being uncovered. And so no little chicks this year. But good news is we still have the falcons in Perth. Their eggs are on the way, and we've got the ones in Orange in New South Wales, who apparently there are a couple of chicks there. So I've logged in, but they haven't let me in yet to the group on Facebook. And I'm hurry up, I need this.
They haven't approved you. It's a private group, and they haven't approved you.
I can't believe it. I think they just got an onslaught of Melbourneites who've been watching ours and then just went, ours.
Need my Peregrine Falcon fix.
I do.
I love that there's a franchise now. This is the new reality TV. There's spin-offs. You heard of the Peregrine Falcons on Collins Street. Now you've got them in Perth. They're in Orange. They're everywhere. It's building. People love this.
They do love this. And I think it is because it is reality TV played out in nature, and that is a whole world that we can have an opinion on, but we can't necessarily influence in any way. And bringing our human needs and human thoughts, and none of that actually counts in their world. And the lack of control and the ability to learn from these animals, I think is a good thing. It's a good thing that we can put ourselves into at this point in time because, you know, when everything gets really overwhelming, which it has been this week, I think put yourself in nature. Somebody said that once, and I'm like, yeah.
Put yourself
that actually
in nature.
helps.
Absolutely.
Put yourself in nature and remember.
Or put yourself in a gallery and gaffer tape a banana to the wall. Have you heard the news?
We love this.
The famous gaffer taped banana titled Comedian, which I think from memory we've spoken about before. It's by an Italian conceptual artist, Maurizio Catalan. It is worth $180,000. It is on loan to the NGV, and the banana gaffer taped to a wall will be coming to Melbourne. Will it be a Melbourne banana? I assume so. In December for the NGV Triennial. And this is big news and a great headline grabber, isn't it? Because everyone wants to talk about this gaffer banana.
Well, I can't work out how it is one of three. Like, what part of it is original if the banana comes from Victoria? And we haven't discussed whether it'll be a ladyfinger or just a regular Coles, El Cheapo.
What's the bend? What's the bend like in the banana?
What part of it have they brought in? What part of it?
It's conceptual art.
Is it the gaffer tape though? Because that wouldn't even stick a banana up on the wall if it's been used numerous times.
Someone's gone to Coles and Bunnings and they've sorted it out, and then they're trotting down to the NGV and there they go. But it's interesting, like this starts conversations, doesn't it? And this is the point of art when it was. Do you remember, maybe this is when we talked about it, in May this was being shown in Seoul in Korea, and a South Korean art student ate the banana, took it off the wall, saying he was a bit hungry because he'd skipped breakfast, and afterwards he ate it and then just peeled back the gaffer and stuck the banana peel back on the wall, which I love. In the videos posted online, shouts of "excuse me" can be heard. He doesn't respond and he just starts eating the banana.
Well, then that the art becomes the performance art again. Like, it gives it a whole new layer.
He knew what he was doing.
He knew exactly what he was doing. And I don't think the artist would be necessarily upset about that, because the whole point of the banana gaffer taped onto the gallery wall is to, talk about ideas of value in art, the role of art in popular culture, what's valuable in the art world. If something is so ephemeral as a banana that rots, then how come there are only 3 of them in this world, and how come we call this art because it's made by an artist? Like, I think there's lots of really interesting questions that have been raised by this particular work. It's not a new way of doing art. I mean, we've got Jeff Koons, who's been doing this sort of stuff too. Like he did a lot of that porcelain Michael Jackson work and images of him and his partner engaged in sex acts in porcelain as well, and that big puppy that is made out of flowers that you see. I think it's at the entrance of Bilbao, the Guggenheim at Bilbao in Spain. So there's always been that tendency. I mean, it goes way back to Marcel Duchamp, who was one of the great Dada artists, who made a urinal called Fountain and put that in an art exhibition or a competition as an artwork, and that's many, over 100 years ago now. An incredible concept at the time, which really threw people. Anything can be art, and anything can be a point of discussion. It just depends on the context and the value that you ascribe to that object. And yeah, I kind of love this because people are like, bananas, there's nothing in this. There's literally, you can go and buy one from the shop. What's the art? But the art is the choosing, I think, the choosing to stick it up there and the knowing that people will talk about it and maybe laugh about it, bring a bit of sense of humour back into the visual art world at a time when we probably need it. I'm into it. I'm definitely into it. I don't think I'll be going to steal it off the wall, but
this is adding to all the questions. My
question
is,
I hate bananas.
Who will eat the nani? That's my question. Who will be the first to eat the nani? And will there be a security guard positioned to stop it, or do they want people to eat the nani? Because it's getting replaced every 3 days, no matter what.
Days.
So who's going to smash that nani, and will there be multiple nanis eaten from the wall of the NGV in December?
I should hope so.
They're the only questions I have, Miff.
Bananas are disgusting. Let's just be honest.
I didn't know that you were anti-banana.
I hate bananas. I've always hated bananas.
Interesting.
Yeah, they smell. It's a texture thing. Like, I get it. I can have a Barney banana, icy pole. The flavour of banana in an icy pole is okay.
What
but
about
a real
banana lollies?
Banana lollies, fine.
Okay.
Give me sweet sugared banana, that's fine. And fake banana, but yeah, no, not the real banana, not that rotting kind of. I just can't. I'm not alone in this. Other people hate bananas too.
No, I know people who've got real fears of bananas. It's a
Yeah.
really specific fruit fear. It's interesting.
I used to have co-workers who would put their their old banana skins in my bin in the hope that I wouldn't notice and it would just start smelling.
That's bullying.
Just to piss me off. Yeah, I know. I loved it.
Well, from bananas to Frasier, I'm sure there's a really bad link I can make there, but I'm not going to go there. Have you heard that Frasier, the 90s/noughties sitcom, which I did actually love, I used to love Frasier, which when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, there's some questionable things going on here.
Oh, yeah.
It's being rebooted. The original ran from 93 to 2004, and this week on Paramount Plus, they rebooted it with a couple of new episodes. Not only is it a reboot, but they've completely recreated the fabric of a 90s sitcom. So they've got that whole setup. They've got a live studio audience. They don't have any Jane Leaves or David Hyde Pierce, who were Daphne and Niles. They decided not to return. In case you missed it, John Mahoney, who played Martin Crane, the dad, died a couple of years ago. Excuse me. And, of course, Eddie the dog that was played by two dogs also passed away. But Kelsey Grammer is Frasier, and he's in it. He's back in Boston, which was the site of Cheers, which is where it all began, where the Frasier spin-off begins. And again, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, why? And I know why, because nostalgia sells and because new ideas are harder to get off the ground in this glut of content that we have where people have to make decisions. But it's kind of getting mixed reviews online. People are sort of saying that the puns are very dated and the sort of setup. It's one thing to make a reboot, but to totally recreate it in a style of television that is just not made anymore, I think is a really interesting choice.
Well, that's the thing that I was wondering about, whether or not it would just look dated by very nature of the format in which it's recorded. The sitcom format feels like something that just doesn't really fly anymore. Like you watch an episode of Friends and you're like, oh.
It's a bit naff.
Geez, it's clunky and it's naff, and you wonder if it's going to feel the same way watching Frasier, or if you just settle back into that same feeling as you do when you watch it on, 10 Peach or whatever on those B channels, whether it's got that same vibe. I don't know. It just feels like television's moved so far forward from that particular format. I don't know. I can't see how it could be quite as engaging. But look, I'm prepared to give it a go. Prepared. What about you? Are you going to give it a go?
Nah.
Nah, no time.
I don't have Paramount Plus. I've got all the other streaming services.
Yeah.
But there's not enough on Paramount Plus to win me over, and this is not going to be the thing that tips it, that's for sure. But weirdly, in the same week as this launching, Seinfeld has been dropping some interesting clues at a stand-up gig in response, and I'm talking about the Jerry Seinfeld of the Seinfeld that I'm referring to. He was at a show in Boston on Saturday, and he responded to a question from the audience, and he teased that a re-envisioned finale of Seinfeld could be in the works. Now, in case you've forgotten it, and look, I'll give a spoiler alert, but also it finished in the late 90s, so if you haven't caught up on that, that's on you. But basically what happens is someone gets mugged, and all the characters of Seinfeld kind of just ignore it, and basically they're, throughout the whole lifespan of Seinfeld, they're known as being completely self-serving, kind of pricks when you think about it, who are always into their own interests and they're ignoring the cares and worries of others. And they finally get done for that. So they're taken to trial and then they end up in prison. And that's sort of the season finale or the whole show finale. I actually didn't mind the finale. I thought it was fine, but apparently a lot of people didn't like it. They thought it was bloated and wasn't true to the spirit of finale. Anyway, he was asked whether he liked the finale, and he said, well, I have a little secret for you about the ending, but I can't really tell it because it's a secret. Here's what I'll tell you, but you can't tell anybody. This has been printed everywhere, by the way. Yeah. Something is going to happen that has to do with that ending. It hasn't happened yet. And just what you are thinking about, Larry and I have also been thinking about. So you'll see. We'll see. Are they going to recreate the Seinfeld finale? And why? You've got enough money, Jerry. So do you, exactly. Larry David. Why?
Yeah, maybe they're just bored.
Jerry!
I think they're just bored. Yeah. I don't know. could be doing. Like it just seems a bit odd, doesn't it?
It's
Like,
strange.
Yeah.
But that hunger for nostalgia and the green lighting that's going on for these kind of shows is rabid. So I guess if
everyone's
they
getting their
take
retirement money, basically. I think we're just going, well, we've got to retire. We've got to keep ourselves in the lifestyle to which we are accustomed, and therefore that means we need to do more and more of something old again. And I feel like maybe culturally that desire for nostalgia and that desire for going backwards in our current age, I think maybe it might start to drop away soon. We could get to the end of that bucket, the bottom of it. I feel like people are going to start wanting new ideas and wanting new things that inspire them a little bit more. At least I hope. Maybe I'm projecting. I just hope.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that this week, the week that the number one show on Netflix is a 4-part movie length, each part docu-series on David Beckham, celebrating a very distinct era, the late 90s and the early 2000s, of which nostalgia and our collective memory of pop culture, of sport, of one of the greats, of all of it is being celebrated. Beckham is one of the best docu-series that's been on TV/streaming services in years. A lot of people are saying it's the best thing since the Michael Jordan series, The Last Dance. And I did say, Miff, we've got to watch this. And you messaged me late last night and went, oh, God, I don't think you'd realise how long every episode was.
Holy hell. Each episode goes for what, an hour and a half or something?
It's like an hour and 15. It's like basically each is a movie-length episode. If it was a French film, maybe. But they're all long episodes.
I mean, we're talking about a guy who kicks a ball, and admittedly he was a genius. But look, I loved the doco and I loved parts of the doco and I loved, some of the sporting montages and some of the growth and the development. But we don't need, all up about 6 hours?
If you've missed
to get the story of David Beckham. Like, I just feel like they could have condensed it a little bit.
I'm going to condense it.
Because I was dying there. Everyone else seems to be loving it, but I was dying. That is too long, absolutely too long.
Here's 36 seconds of it, so you can save yourself 5.5 hours if you like Miff and you don't want to watch it. Here's a little taster of what goes on in the Beckham docu-series.
Tonight we bring you the story of how David Beckham became a global phenomenon.
I never really did well at school because
all I ever wanted to do was play football.
My manager kept saying, try and keep it under wraps. So we would meet in car parks, and that's not as seedy as it sounds.
Big smile. It definitely didn't change me.
Well, it changed. There's no doubt about that.
It's so good. It's sport, it's gossip, it's fashion, and particularly bad fashion. It's my coming of age flashing before my eyes, Miff. This is our era.
Our era, and again, in looking with 2023 goggles on, you can see how awful it must have been to be a celebrity in those times, to be under the glaze of the paparazzi and just the relentless pursuit of every detail, every intimate detail of their lives. It would have been absolutely horrible to live that experience. And the best thing about it, though, is, you get intimate footage of the wedding in their purple outfits. Do you remember that? Especially when you think about Fash and their
It's
wedding,
a real royal purple too, isn't it? And there were thrones involved.
Yeah, thrones involved. It was just divine. So I actually loved all those moments. And the moments where Victoria is speaking. I think Victoria Beckham is somebody who is to be deeply admired because she has a sense of humour and a level of intelligence about it all. And I love her disinterest in the actual game of football. She's like, still not really into football, to be honest, but she supported David the whole way, and they go into details of affairs and whatnot, but she seems like an absolute hoot. And he comes across as really lovely too, like quite a sweet person who was extraordinarily talented and thrust into this world. And even though he was one of the greatest footballers of all time, he still got completely and utterly dicked around by every coach that he ever played with. And that was the bit that I found fascinating. He almost was powerless in a world where he was actually the commodity. He was the greatest commodity for them. And yet he had no voice almost. They just treated him like shit, club after club after club.
I always find that interesting because, watching, football codes and also any kind of sport, any major sport, basketball as well, players are traded, and they're often traded without their consent or indeed without their want. They've just, they're basically traded like stock, like cattle, and they are paid incredibly well. Like there are millions and millions of dollars involved in this.
250 million is not a small amount.
The bit where he's talking about whether or not they're going to take the LA Galaxy thing and maybe he'll stay at Real Madrid, and it's just like, I'm pretty sure he's going to LA for 250 mil. But the thing that I loved about this, watching it, and I was watching it with Jeffy, is that Jeffy's a really big football fan and he remembered all of those games, all of those politics. He was naming every player. I finally got to realise that half the players that were referenced in that era have been represented by characters on Ted Lasso, like Roy Keane is Roy Kent and all that, like Zidane, all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, that all makes sense to me. But then on the flip side, I was involved in, reading the Who weeklies and the New weeklies and all those tabloid mags and reading all of this shit. And again, much like we see on all these kind of looking back docos with the benefit of hindsight, we get a sense of all the stuff that we consumed, like you said, at the time and just what it was like for them internally. So both Jeff and I watching it at the same time, getting something completely different out of it, but learning in this great crossover, I just thought, what a masterful documentary that just serves such a broad audience while also being compelling until the end. And interestingly, where the Beckhams, unlike other documentaries like this that have been on streaming services, are not producers. I thought they might be because they got total access. And you know what? It does paint them in a pretty good light. You only get to the last episode where David's infidelities and kind of, I don't know, some of the stuff he does where he just like decides willy-nilly without discussing with his wife that he's going to move to another country and play
another
football.
country in a few days.
It's like, okay, mate. But none of that's really brought until the last episode, which is interesting. But they weren't producers on this. But it does very much revive brand Beckham. And last year, David Beckham was roundly, criticised for the, again, massive multi-million dollar, what was it, $300 million deal that he has in representing and promoting Qatar around the World Cup. And there were a lot of questions about that. And this is a docu-series that does a lot to fix some of that ill will towards David Beckham, that's for sure.
It's very much a redemption doco. You are going to be fascinated as to who directed it. Do you know?
I know, but tell Bang Fam, it's amazing.
Isn't it amazing? Fisher Stevens from Succession.
Hugo,
the communications executive at Waystar Royco.
Hapless Hugo, as I like to call him.
And there he was, with a hat on. You never see his face, but
you hear his voice and you're like, I know that voice. And then you see him briefly kind of in shadow and you're like, it's him. It's that guy. It's Hugo. I didn't realise that as well as being an actor, he's won Academy Awards for docos and been directing and producing docos for years. Like he's been really involved. So he's a bit of a goat, isn't he? He does it all.
He does. No, very, very impressive. Look, I loved it. There was lots in it. Needs to be shorter. That was my usual review with anything, really. Needs to be shorter.
I really liked as well the bits where it was just focusing very closely on all the footballers' faces. And this is something that I just wanted to do a little side bang, because if you don't know that technique of filming someone face on, usually documentaries are sort of shot as talking heads where you're looking off to the side of the camera and you are answering an interviewer and it's never straight down the barrel. But years and years ago, a brilliant documentarian called Errol Morris came up with this camera where he wasn't showing footage, but he was showing a reflection of his face as the documentarian in the actual lens of the camera. So people were looking down the barrel of the camera and seeing Errol Morris's face asking questions. And his sort of feeling was he gave it a name called the Interrotron, as in like an interrogation machine, which I love. But what it does is, as with anything, is you're looking dead into someone's eyes, and they're emoting about, something or reacting to something. It's really hard to conceal those emotions. I think that you've got to have a pretty good poker face to be able to conceal that when you're reacting to something. And you can really see that. Save for David Beckham, who's had so much plastic surgery and filler that when he does emote, I'm like, I think I can see a tear. But it's just so frozen. So frozen.
It's so true. And I've got to say the big winners of this doco was teeth enamels. Everyone's had their teeth done. And good
I
on
loved
them.
his British teeth at the start, though, before he had them fixed.
His little tombstone teeth. They were cute.
Tombstone teeth. I've never heard that before. I love that. A lot of people are talking about some of the highlights of Beckham, and this has got to be one of the actual best moments if we're talking about the maybe previously unknown hilarity of Victoria Beckham and just the wonderful back and forth that Posh and Becks have with each other.
We're very working class.
Be honest.
I am being
Be
honest. I am being
What car
honest.
did your dad drive you to school in?
So my dad did.
No, one answer.
My dad.
What car was it?
All right, it's not a simple answer
What
because
car did you get your dad to drive?
it
you to school
depends.
in? No.
Okay,
What
in the
car?
80s,
What?
my dad had a Rolls Royce.
Thank you.
We are both working class, but my dad drove me to school in a Rolls Royce. And I love that
love
he
it.
called her out on it. So good.
I fancied him. I just fancied him. They just fancied each other.
It was really simple, wasn't it? It was a kind of a simple love in a simpler time that became very, very complicated. And it was really nice to go back to that earlier footage and of seeing them when they met, meeting in, as we heard before, in car parks and things, and stealing 5 minutes here and there.
Getting
with
matching
each other.
blonde tips, all of it.
Totally. Frosted tips, that's where it began.
It's incredible. I loved reliving it all. It's on Netflix now if you've got it. It is so, so good. And you will have
watch
to set
the
aside
highlights. Watch the highlights.
5.5 hours.
Yeah.
It's very long. Very, very long. I mean, if you sent a great piece to me this week, which really struck a chord, stuff that we talk about a lot on Bang On, but it feels like Kyle Shaker just nailed it in this piece in the New Yorker.
Yeah, it's called Why the Internet Isn't Fun Anymore. And I think that pretty much nails entirely the vibe of the piece. And that I think we've all felt this particular draining of social media platforms of late and draining not of content by people that we know, but just the fact that we don't see content from people that we know as much anymore. And there's a lot more advertising. There's an algorithmic change that seems to have happened where content is coming at you, but it's not really stuff that you even would want or need anymore. And I think that's taken, certainly has for me as an observer. It's taken the joy out of the internet and social media platforms for many of us, and I don't know, it just makes it a bit of a dull place. All the smaller voices, all the independent thinkers, that kind of thing that I guess made places like Twitter, which is now X, of course, an interesting place to be. They've all gone. They've all gone, and we're getting unverified content from people who've paid for blue ticks rather than established news outlets, and therefore it just feels a bit darker, as well, as if you're not entirely sure of the validity of a lot of the information that we're getting online, and the types of people that are showcased. Probably not my kind of people. They're the loudest. And I think that's why people are now spending much less time on social media platforms than they would have been even 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's a dark place, and it's also just another place where you feel like you've been pushed into a corner and you're just being sold to, sold so intensely to. It's much more hierarchical than it used to be. This is one of the things that it sort of calls out. And we've seen it happening, but it's, again, like you say, these huge creators that are becoming broadcasters. And when you think about what a broadcaster is, a broadcaster means one point to many. So the internet, literally the World Wide Web, as it was called when it first was born, was a series of networks where you could just fall down a rabbit hole and keep searching and searching and searching. As you see, if you ever try to, and maybe this is something that, you don't know if you don't work in content creation like we do, but if I ever posted a link to another source as on Facebook,
no one ever sees it.
No, the algorithm just buries it because they don't want you leaving the platform. And this happens on all of the platforms. They just crush that. They want to keep you inside where they can sell to you, where they can get a cut
more
of everything.
Information from you.
All of it. They want to keep you inside the machine. And again, we've talked about it before, but it's just such an irony that the bigger access and connected points that we have, the much more funneled we become. And I think people are getting a little bit jack of it. Also, the way
boring.
that
It's boring.
you see I remember when I first started on Instagram and some of the stuff that I put up was like really haphazard and not, just kind of like whatever, but now I'm actively thinking about what I post, and that's what happens with everyone, regardless of whether you're a quote unquote public figure or not. Everyone is forced to perform the role of an influencer in order to get their stuff seen, because everybody, even if you're not selling anything, wants to be seen. As a human being, you want to be seen and recognized, and that barrier becomes higher. So fewer people take that risk of posting. And again, we settle into this role of passive consumers, this broadcast model, which is totally against everything that the internet was first born of.
So in order to create something new, what we've done is actually do that, but then revert back to exactly what we know.
It's just wild. I mean, it's a great piece. It really captured a lot of the stuff that we talked about we've been talking about for years now. It's just getting worse and worse. It's kind of a good reminder, because I feel like you're sort of in it and you're like, oh yeah, it's cooked. But then you're like, no, it used to be like this and it was better. Twitter is X, whatever it's called. I just don't use it very much anymore. And I used it a bit this week because the TV show was on and I wanted to take the temperature of what people were thinking, answer questions people had. But it's the first time I've been on it. Yeah, well, it's just like no one's on there. It's weird. Like there was still lots of stuff, but it's just kind of like, oh, it's really different. I haven't engaged with it in this way for so long, and it's just really different. And it's kind of sad, because it used to be a place where something happened and you'd go straight on there. You'd find out the information. And I acknowledge that it's always been a place where getting factually correct information has been a bit of, a pothole area. But now it's like you don't even go on there. You just it's just an absolute mess. Elon Musk has absolutely cooked it. But it's a shame that the internet, I don't know what, it's obviously going to keep evolving. AI is going to continue to change things. The weird chatbots that Mark Zuckerberg has got. Sam Kerr and Snoop Dogg as a Dungeons and Dragons master. What's happening? Where are we now?
Yeah, it's not a good place.
What's my name?
It's time to back away from it for a little while. Give them all a rest. Take our power back.
And maybe do some silent walking. You shared a great piece with me this week about silent walking, the trend of just not having anything going on. No podcasts, no scrolling while you're walking, nothing in your eyes or ears. It's a revolution, Miff.
It's a revolution for anyone under the age of maybe 30, but for anyone over the age of 30, we just call it walking. And look, lots of people have made jokes about it and been quite patronising about the fact that the young folk are doing silent walking. But the young folk, they have been brought up in a culture that is 24/7 noise.
Yeah.
And, they have earbuds in all the time. Part of life is now very much lived online or through apps. So it's remiss of us, or it would be bad of us, to judge these kids for making a choice to step back.
100%.
So I feel a bit, I laughed at it, but I also went, actually, no, this is probably a good thing for them to acknowledge, because when you're in something and in a world so deeply ingrained in the way that you live, it's very difficult to back away, as we've known with our own experiences with social media. But this is about noise. This is about just getting outside and listening to the birds while you walk and not having a soundtrack. So apparently everyone's learning a lot about themselves and the way their brains work, which is, good, both good and bad, I think. Sometimes I need noise to stay away from my own brain. And I guess it's good to find that out too.
I love it. I didn't listen to anything when I was in Japan. I was walking around a lot and just kind of wandering and taking in the sights and sounds. I wanted to be connected to the space around me too, but also Well, you'll need to listen for bears when you're on a hike. I need to listen for the bears. Bear bells and bears.
Yeah,
I heard them, Miff. I heard them.
You did.
They were cracking the branches. They were ready to crush my bones. But that, I've been doing it even coming back, because just having a few things rolling around in my head and realising that, scrolling and looking at your phone and taking your phone out when you got to wait a good long 5 seconds for the pedestrian crossing light to change, all that stuff. It's like, it's not good for me. And leaving my phone at home when I go for a walk means that you give, your brain a big chance to breathe. But also, like anything we've talked about before, like it's when you're bored, you're creative, or you solve problems and you just let it go. Like you just have all of those little thoughts flooding around, and then you give it a chance to sort of let them release where there's no other distractions, and it's just so good. So I'm all for silent walking, and I'm as guilty as being distracted by all of the technologies as anybody else. So I'm here for silent walking.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, speaking of the internet, we have started filming Bang On. In fact, if you're watching us right now, I'm looking down the barrel of the camera like a real dork and giving you a wave through the round window. There's a reference for anyone over 35.
Play School's still on. Play School's still
Oh, yeah, it's true. Hey, I've heard a theory that if you pick the arch window as your favourite window, then you're queer. Have I ever told you that? So,
No, I don't know that theory, but it was my favourite.
yeah, it's my favourite too. So just throwing it out there if you want to use that at a party for a conversation. But I digress. Bang On is now being filmed in full and is being put up on the ABC Australia YouTube. So
That's right.
You've been seeing us do little clips on social media as you scroll and maybe seeing that pop up. If you want to watch the whole cooked...
I mean, goodness knows why they want to see this in the flesh anyway. I don't know, to be honest. I can't imagine it's all that exciting. But I put my lippy on for it and off we go.
I think about what I'm going to wear on filming days. I make an effort.
Yeah, good. I did too. I put a bit of colour on.
You look
Bit
great.
of colour for the YouTubes.
Gorge. So if you want to check it out, we will put a link in the show notes. If the show notes are just remain a mystery to you, 260 odd episodes in, then just go to the ABC Australia YouTube and you'll find us there on the front page. Bang On, now for your eyes and ears, for better or worse. What are you banging on about this week?
Oh, goodness me. A television series I didn't realise had even had a series 2, and I loved the first series, which I think I banged on about a couple of years ago, which was I Hate Susie, a UK production that stars Billie Piper as Susie, and Susie is, of course, it's actually watching the Beckham documentary. There's a lot of things that were going on in there that plays into this television series. And this was about the way she lived her life and the intrusion of the media and just the general chaos of being a pop star. And, of course, Billie Piper grew up as a pop star in the UK and had quite an interesting formative experience in that she had a much older partner and he was a BBC broadcaster and they were in the news a lot. And I imagine there's a lot in this role that she could probably relate to or at least be able to understand and portray. And this second series is only 3 episodes and it is phenomenal. It follows on after she's broken up with her partner who she has a child with, and she's broken up because photographs of her in a very compromising sexual position were leaked to the media, and all of a sudden everyone went from loving Susie, this UK pop star, to absolutely hating her, hence the title. And this is her redemption story, or at least an attempt to, where she's just living the worst possible existence. She has to do a horrifying Christmas dance show in order to redeem herself. And it's
like Dancing with the Stars, but way worse.
Way worse. And we thought the television series The Bear, was anxiety-inducing. If you've ever worked in television, watch this show for the anxiety of doing a live show like that and just the rushing through corridors and everything happening so quickly and people talking to you but not talking at all. And I just found it quite extraordinary as a viewer.
She's incredible in this.
She is incredible and utterly blown away. She's also an amazing dancer too. I didn't know that about her. I mean, I guess she was a pop star in the 2000s, but she's amazing. She puts everything into this performance and utterly blown away by it. And it's really dark. It's really bleak.
It's filmed in a really bleak way as well. Like it's just every part of it you feel, that anxiety, it's consuming, isn't it?
Oh, it's horrible. And it's if you'd ever want to be anyone on that level, because there's nothing you can do that would make anyone love you in the way that perhaps these complicated and chaotic people want to be loved. And oh gosh, it was really full on, but I loved it. I was riveted, utterly riveted. And I think you can probably watch it without having to watch the first series as well.
Yeah.
I think it's quite standalone and it's only 3 eps. Nice and quick, everyone.
It's on Stan,
right?
Take
note. TV producers, take note.
I love that every time we review something, you're just like, by the way, here's what I actually want.
Yeah. Yeah, I ain't got time for 15-part series anymore.
need to get on some web
As much as our
series.
creative people would love that, I actually think we do need to bring that stuff back a little bit more long form in terms of, giving things life and
Like bang on that needs clocking an hour these days.
Exactly. That allows stories to be told in a much more long form way. Actors get work, TV people get work, all of that. I'm into it. Script writers get work, but also really enjoy short, sharp, get to the point people.
So there's a bit of pot kettle going on here because we did start as a 25-minute podcast and that's completely blown out of the water. But yeah, here we go. Anyway.
Yeah. What are you banging on about?
I'm banging on about a book that was released a long time ago that I finally read, and I wanted to bang on about this because it's one of those books that you see in every secondhand bookstore or at the library, or maybe you've seen the movie and you're like, oh, I should really read this. And what I'm saying is you should really read this. It is The Remains of the Day, the Booker Prize-winning 1989 novel by the wonderful British author Kazuo Ishiguro. Now, I read Clara and the Sun just last year, which is the first time I've ever read his work. That was his latest book and I loved it. And so after reading that and understanding finally what a beautiful writer he was, I was like, I just got to keep reading more of this.
I love that book too. Thanks for the recommends.
Oh, Clara and the Sun. It's great, isn't it? It's so good. And so have you ever read Remains of the Day?
No, I've never read it.
You got to read the
tell
book.
me.
You got to see The Wire. So basically, it's very much, and I did have Anthony Hopkins' head, face in my head, and Emma Thompson because they were in the film of the same name that was made into a film a few years later. But basically, Stevens, Anthony Hopkins, is a butler. He has a very long, lifetime record of service at a place called Darlington Hall. And he's telling the story of his recent employment and his past employment with Lord Darlington, who has since died, as he takes this road trip to visit a former colleague who is the character played by Emma Thompson, Miss Kenton. And as he makes his way through the British countryside, this story unfolds and you learn more and more. And what's the beautiful sort of secret of this film is that it's a slow reveal. Stevens himself is telling this story and it's like the character doesn't actually know what he's saying. The reader, the audience is going, oh, okay, I can see there's something else completely big going on here with the politics of the Lord Darlington. That sounds a bit rough, but he is not cognizant of it. And that's the beauty of that, kind of telling his own story without realizing its full meaning and its full impact. And yeah, it's very upstairs, downstairs, the power that goes with that, the things that remain unsaid. I love Downton Abbey and all of the pomp and circumstance of those kind of conversations. And this is sort of captured so beautifully in that. And also the real shifting of a time. This is going through a period through when these kind of grand houses were starting to close down, when people who, in the late 1800s had staff of, 30 or 40 people. And then as you go towards the 1920s and the 1930s and the 40s, these houses still exist, but the staff aren't there anymore. The people who live in the houses are very different. So it's a really interesting and very concise capture of so many things. It's a short book and it's just beautiful. And the scene at the bus stop at the end is just like one of the most perfect and beautiful pieces of writing I've ever experienced. So
Heaven.
The Remains of the Day, if you've ever seen it and gone, I should read that, then you should read that. And I want you to read that. That's what I'm banging on about this week.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone when I posted about it on my Instagram, which I share lots of book reviews, were like, you've got to read Never Let Me Go next. I am going to be reading that next. So thank you, Bang Fam.
Gorgeous.
All right, I'm off to do some silent walking.
Great. It's called walking, but yep, go for it. I love how we've got to give everything a name.
It's how we understand the world. Labels.
Yes, that's right.
Labels, funnels, channels, just, conforming. That's how we understand the world, Miff. You know that.
Yep, I do. Go look up, look in the trees and look at the birds today.
I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, babes.
Bang. 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 Bang on.